Mike, am I
I can hear
unmuting?
you.
Oh, hey, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
And
great.
just
All
like you
right.
said, I've heard you
The whole time? You heard me the whole time? Great.
and I saw your picture the whole time.
Okay,
So I
good.
don't.
All right, here we go. We have to continue with this unbelievable exploration into Rabbi Nachman's story of the cripple. It's an unbelievable story um, that we're talking about. And the story, just to recap quickly, once upon a time, there was this wise man, and on his deathbed, he had his sons and family members gather around, and he told them, make sure you water trees. They had to make sure that they watered trees. And of course, that kind of strange, whatever that means. Of course, they knew what it meant. We may be scratching the surface of what it meant. And I think I mentioned last time that what does it mean to water trees? That watering trees means we have energy that we send up. We have energy in terms of our good deeds, our Torah study, our tefillah, our prayers. And those things create an energy in the cosmic realm. I'm using of the hand motion of up, but really it's not a literal up. And that's what it is basically the expression of a desire to connect, a yearning to connect. That is what we will call Maim Nukvin, feminine waters. Those feminine waters create a bestowal from above. So we create a feminine waters from below to above, and then there's a bestowal from above to below. And that bestowal from above to below comes in the form, one of the forms is, of course, in Kabbalistic terms, chasadim ugvurot. But really, it's the Torah, the Kabbalah calls it the watering of the trees. And the trees are the sphirot, all of the worlds, the trickle down effect that bleeds into our earthly plane, our experience, blessings and shefa and bracha. That's what it means by watering trees. And according to my limited definition, if somebody can find a bigger one, I'm open. So then we have this one of the among the sons of this wise man was this crippled person who couldn't walk. I understand that cripple is a slur of something. It's not PC to say it. I'm sorry. I can say chiger. Uh, how do you say it? Lame? I don't know what word would be to say. Disabled. That's it. Disabled. Okay. That he could not walk. And of course, he was supported by his family for some time. And he was able to save enough money, had money left over, and he finally decided to go into a business on his own. And he got himself a wagon driver, a secretary, and head out to Leipzig, this town. And on their way, they passed by an inn. It was starting to get dark. The secretary suggested to stay there, but he, of course, was very stubborn and pressed on. He pressed on, and then they got lost in the forest, and that's when these robbers came, robbed them of everything. Of course, he couldn't run like the secretary or the wagon driver, and as a result, he had to stay in his wagon. He had little bit of provisions. The robbers took everything and took off and left him alone in the middle of the forest. He had no idea where he was, and he couldn't even get there. So eventually, his provisions ran out. He threw himself out of his wagon and proceeded to eat the only thing that was available, which was the grass. He ate grasses and then he crawled further, ate grasses and crawled further. As long as there was grass, he didn't move. Hung out there. Don't ask me what he was doing. Maybe he had a cell phone, maybe. Okay. In any case, he kept eating grass and moving on until he got to this one very unique grass, this special grass. He says, I never saw this grass. I've seen all the grasses around here. I don't know how long he was out there for. There for quite some time, eating all the grasses, and he never came upon this grass. This grass was very special. He says, ooh, this looks very special. So he decided to rip the whole thing out from the roots. Of course, he ripped the roots out, and in the roots was this odd, precious gem. Rabbi Kaplan calls it a diamond. Uh, it's a diamond, yes, but it's not what he said. Actually, in the actual text, a precious stone, a good stone. Okay, and I'm just trying to find it so I could get it online so I don't have to look at it constantly. No, I don't even have it here. Okay. Yeah. Just trying to see it because usually if I get it on the screen, it's just easier. But of course, sometimes you just can't have it. All right. So he sees this precious stone that is attached, and the precious stone was an unusual precious stone. This precious stone had writing on the sides of it. It was a four-sided precious stone. It had writings on the side of it. And whatever it is, this stone, if you would grasp that side of the diamond, whatever it is that said on that side of the diamond was going to propel you to place. So the side of the diamond that he grasped was, here, I got it, great. The side of the diamond that he grasped, what said on it, what? If you grasp this side of the diamond, it's almost like, like Jumanji or something, If you grasp this side of the diamond, it will be a pity to go home, or you shouldn't go home. You don't even want to go home. Why would you want to go home, right? So, because you will be transported to the place where the sun and the moon meet. And instantly, that's the side that he grabbed. And when he grabbed that side, you guys got the rest of the pages. All right. And so he grabbed that side of the precious stone, and instantly it lifted him up and transported him to where? The place of the day and the night meet. All this is cloaked with metaphor, and that's what we're going to discuss today, okay? Just to recap here a little bit. And as he's listening to this conversation of the sun and the moon, the sun is complaining that there's this unbelievable tree. It grows fruit that gives unbelievable healing and health and lung, and the leaves are heal also. It has unbelievable powers, this tree, but not tree, the sun says, I dry it up. It was so great. And if the tree were watered, it would have all these great powers, like he says here, to give children, to give parnasa, to give a livelihood, right? To heal one's sicknesses, all this. Someone there needs to mute because I'm hearing them. Please mute. So then the moon answers and says, you're worried about the affairs of other people. Let me tell you my problems. I got 1,000 mountains, and around these 1,000 mountains, there are another 1,000 mountains, and this is the place of the demons. The demons have feet like chickens, and they don't have any strength in their feet, but no. So therefore, they pull the nourishment from my feet, and because of this, I don't have any strength in my feet. I have a powder, but a wind comes and blows it away. And then the sun answers and says, is that your worry? I know a path, special highway. It's got all these paths going off to the sides, these different paths. And it has powders of the righteous. It has powders of the insane. It has powders that strengthen legs, because there's certain righteous people who accept suffering upon themselves for the sake of the Holy Shekhinah, for the sake of Israel. They're carried away by the landowners, and they have no strength in their feet because their feet are chained. And this powder helps them and gives them strength. So this is so that's the conversation between the sun and the moon. So the what do we call him? The disabled person. Let's go PC. Okay. Sees on the other side of the diamond, and that is the place where the highway. So he grasps that side, and instantly he's transported to the place of the highway. And he sees the pathway where it is a remedy for the feet. He puts his feet on it, and he's healed. Incredible. And since he's healed now, he gets the idea to gather all of the different types of powders, puts them in separate bags, and he goes back. Don't ask me how he gets there, but he goes back to the place where the robbers robbed from him in the first place, and he sets up a whole operation there where he puts two types of powder on the path. He mixes the insane with the righteous, mixes them, puts them on the ground, and when the robbers come out to go and rob somebody, they instantly become awakened to the they want it. They regret their misdeeds, but they're insane about it, and they blame each other, and they all kill each other until finally the head robber comes, because there's no more men left, And that's when the ex-disabled now takes away all that powder, and he just puts the one powder down of the righteous. And the robber comes, he walks on that path, and he just has complete regret over every single thing he's done. He feels terrible about it. He wants to totally turn back. And that's when the ex-cripple crawls down from the tree, and he says, listen, man, you robbed me. You got to give back my money. He says, oh, no, I'm going to give you back your money. I'm going to give you back everybody else's money I stole. Just tell me how I could do tshuva. How can I get back? How can I make amends? And so he says, you have to go to the town. You have to admit what you did, that you were the man who cuckolded everybody away to be and train them to be robbers in the forest. And so that's what he did. And then what happened was that they killed him. Okay. That's where we ended off right now, but we have to go back because all this stuff has to be discussed. Because what does it mean? So let's go back and discuss the cripple. The cripple we talked about a little bit already. But I wanted to something to me. He didn't bring down in the notes here that when I think about in the Chumash, I think about Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu, if we recall in Genesis, wrestled with the angel, and the angel grabbed his thigh. Some people say he grabbed only one. Some people say he grabbed both. In any case, because of that, so Yaakov Avinu was essentially disabled. And when he finally defeated the angel, had all the altercation, until you bless me, I'm not letting you go till you bless me. He blessed him, he left. And Yaakov limped until the sun came up and healed him. I might have shared this with you before, but the Zohar explicitly says this is the whole redemption of the world in a nutshell. In other words, the idea of Yaakov Avinu is like mankind. And towards the end of the generations, he's limping because Esav attacked him. And the sun coming out, that it comes out slowly, is the redemption. That the light of the redemption won't be like a bam, right? It's going to be kima, kima. It says that in the Talmud in Yerushalmi. I saw it once. I would like to see it again. But kima, kima, which means kima, like lakum, like to get up. Like we get up slowly. Like the way that the awakening of the children of Israel will be like a slow awakening as the dawn rises, and then it gets up till it's a sunrise. It's the same way. That is what heals Yaakov, is the sun heals Yaakov. Here it's kind of different, but very similar, because this also, Rabbi Nachman's story of the cripple, is the seventh beggar. And the seventh beggar, as I told you last time, that these seven beggars met these kids in the forest, and they blessed them that they should be like him. And each of the beggars had a defect. And later on in the story, the beggars come back to these children who are now grown up and getting married. And he says, you thought I had this defect I couldn't see, but really I have superpower eyes. You thought I couldn't hear? No, I have the greatest hearing ever. You thought I couldn't speak? I'm the most profound orator. And et cetera, till like the one who had no hands, the sixth beggar had no hands. You think I don't have any hands? My hands are extraordinary. And then the feet, of course, Rabbi Nachman doesn't tell you the last chapter in the story about the beggar with no feet. But we want to say that this is referring to that. So when we say that and we're referring to this particular person, the mechiger, okay, this disabled person, that we think he has no power in his feet, but actually really he has superpower in his feet. And the question we have to think about is, what is that superpower in his feet? So let's look at some of the notes here. Okay, we're going to start with the beginning. I think not that first page that I gave you, page 83, but we're going to start on page 84. But just to recap, that the major theme of this story is the weakness of the feet. Okay, and some relate this to the soul of the Mashiach, of the Messiah. And then what does that mean? Why should the Messiah have no feet? What does feet mean? So now, just to go a little bit on the next page, which is page 84 in the notes there, where he went to his brothers, his family members, and say, I want to make my own living. So here you have to look in the note here. And I think I got some yellow there, which helps everybody out. Isn't that nice that this time I got some yellow for you? So he says here, where it says the note, the beginning words were better that he earn his own living. So it is a general rule in charity that it is much better to set a poor man up in business than to give him charity. Okay, that might be known to many people. But then the next note was, it's better, you have to keep this in mind, better than watering the tree every day. One should strive to break down the barriers so that the tree can constantly receive water. So watering trees is good. But there's a river over there. Why don't we just dig ditches that the water or the rainwater or whatever it is, that it'll naturally get its own water, right? 2 ways to water a tree. So breaking down the barriers, and I think that's a lot of what this story is about. Breaking down the barriers. And that could lead us into what the avoda, the service of the Messiah, son of David, is going to do. And just to finish that note, as indeed happens at the end of the story, as we will see. Okay, now skip down to the bottom there where it says robbers. As we know, in continuing the story, just to recap the story, they got lost in the forest. Now let's look at a metaphor, because we can break this story down in 3 ways. You can break this story down that it's talking about you, and in the areas in your life where you feel you are crippled, disabled, see, you have challenges, you don't seem to be able to move forward. That could be one. And then there's more of a specific, let's say, for Mashiach. And then there's humanity as a whole and history as a whole, which could maybe one bleeds into the other, are connected. So in terms of the global way that Rabbi Kaplan now is giving a commentary, I looked in other books, by the way. Couldn't find anything. As a matter of fact, one commentary said, this is so mystery. There's no reference. Rabbi Nachman did not speak about it or give any references to it. Okay, at least the first part of the story, maybe the second part. So in any case, here he gives an interesting idea, an interesting insight of who are these robbers and who is the man who led the people from the town away to become robbers in the forest. So this is interesting how the insight that Rabbi Kaplan gives here, if we need this note, the beginning part of the note is also pretty interesting, where it says robbers. First of all, forest was a place of the evil forces. We're going to see that more and talk about that. So the robbers, this was a result of his stubbornness, that he wouldn't stop at the inn. And he went into the forest and got lost. He was stubborn. It may seem that his stubbornness caused his downfall, but this was actually the beginning of his salvation. Why? Because as a result of this attack, he discovers the diamond and eventually cures his legs and then gains all the robbers' treasure. So here, Rabbi Kaplan wants to bring down the lesson is that at times one must take chances and be stubborn, even though it may involve danger. Whoa, don't go ask your local rabbi before you do that, okay? I can understand the concept of stubborn, take chances, involve danger, okay, but it could be that a person might have that inside of him that he feels this is the right thing, this is the thing he needs to do. In any case, the idea of stubborn was kind of interesting because, as we noted, that the viceroy in the Lost Princess story, it's one diamond with many faces, okay? So you have to look at different angles. We noticed that the viceroy in the story of the Lost Princess, he was very stubborn, right? Because people were telling him it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. The giants were telling him it doesn't exist. He says, but I know for sure that it does exist. He was stubborn. So a lot of times we have to understand that stubbornness is a good thing. As a matter of fact, one of the big claims after the sin of the golden calf was that God called the the Bnei Israel, stubborn, stiff-necked people. And Moshe's answer was, yeah, they're stiff-necked people. How is that an answer, right? The answer was, listen, once you get them, you got them. Because once they are in your camp, they're going to stay loyal. So in other words, Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I know they're stubborn, but that's a good quality, and it could be harnessed for good. Okay, going on now. Listen to the last part of this note, very, very important. If one has faith in God, that's really what this story is about. It can bring about one's salvation. The idea of feet, and I think we talked about this last time, has to do with emunah. Emunah in our generations, we are in a state where if it's as if we can't walk, really. It's as if we can't move. Really, it's as if, okay? Almost that we could say to a point where we're sleeping. We're sleeping like Boaz, told Ruth. And it's very prophetic and metaphoric, that whole sefer. Boaz represented like the Shekhinah, or no, actually a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and Ruth represented the Shekhinah, who's at the feet of Boaz. When he was sleeping in the threshing floor, she came, she uncovered his legs, and then they had a conversation. And finally he says, listen, you sleep at my feet until the morning and then get up, okay? So sleep at my feet until the morning was like the whole code of our state before the final redemption. You're going to be sleeping. We don't want to. We're going to be sleeping, but we sleep at the feet. The feet is like the end of history. Like the head was the beginning of history, the torso, the shoulders, the torso, like in Daniel's dream, until the feet, which is the end of history, in which we are now. And we're limping, if at all. Okay? Like Yaakov Avinu. But the thing that gets us there is emunah. To strengthen it. And believe me, if you're not tested, Am Yisrael is being tested now in the most greatest way. And the idea here is if your own corners, you can strengthen your connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that means quite simply that, things are going to happen. And it could be a result of either people from other people. It could be you think it's nature. It could be your own mistakes. You might think, I made a mistake. And you think that's, has nothing to do with God. No, even God intended for you to make that mistake. Even God intended you to make that decision and do that. Yes, that's emunah. It has to permeate every fiber of your being and all of your activities. You have to constantly say the magic words. This is what the Creator wants. Everything Hashem does is for the best. And then the third phrase, which is, this is only removing the barrier that's bringing me closer to Him. Like if something goes not your way, right? This is only done. Hashem is doing this only to bring me closer. You have to have those thoughts in mind. It's very, very important. Okay, so going on, like faith is really, really about this whole Torah, this whole story of Rabbi Nachman. Now, to go on here, to give it to a more global sense, it's kind of interesting. The robbers represent the forces in Klippa. So now we have to of creation. We're talking about Yaakov Avinu in the forest. We're talking about us in the forest. People were robbed from. Yeah, they are stealing our money. That's right. The Erev Rav are stealing our money. Forces of evil in Klippa. Klippa means husks or shells. External forces. Now, famine is interesting. If we recall in the story that there was a time of famine and a man came to the city and he says, whoever wants to eat, come with me. Whoever wants a job, come with me. And who was this man? So the man Rabbi Kaplan brings down is the Satan, the angelic force that's meant to seduce mankind to doing bad, and then of course he rats on him and punishes him also. But the idea of the beginning of the formation of this force called the Satan, there's a tzimtzum. That's the famine. The famine is a tzimtzum, as Kaplan says in the note, is a constriction and holding back of God's power. And this resulted in the birth of the forces of evil. What is the forces of evil? There's lots to talk about that. Ratzon the Kabbalah, we've talked about that in the past. Will to receive, this selfishness, extreme force of I want this pleasure now. And another term, we could just look at it as the illusion of the separation between us and God. That's the new definition I like to give that now. Write it down because it's important. The illusion and the separation between us and God. Okay? Because really there is no separation between us and God. We seem to be experiencing it now. Okay. Our job is to see beyond that and train our minds and hearts to do that. And the Satan, of course, is this force that tries to say, yeah, you are separate from God. You're totally separate. As a matter of fact, you're so separate, you're so far away. You're so far away, forget it. Okay, so anyways, attracting a number of men, going on in the commentary there at the bottom, attracting a number of men, the forces of evil had their origin in the realm of, where am I? On the wrong page, right? Oh, the forces of evil had their origin in the realm of the holy. Everything sucks from the holy. The question is, how much are they allowed to take? As we're going to see a little bit later. Okay, so just to skip the next page of the notes there. Okay, this is another interesting idea. I'm not sure how to tie this in totally, but we have to kind of put it and see if we can put it together, put it in. Because up until now, okay, you have this cripple, you have the tzimtzum, you have the forces of evil, like in this realm, trying to seduce us. And then we have here this idea of the wagon, the driver, the secretary, the driver, who they were able to flee. That's the note there. It says, when a person is born, he loses the intellect that he had as a soul. He does not have the power to travel through the universes anymore. In other words, when a baby was in the womb of the mother, it was an angel which basically taught him the entire Torah, including a tour of Gan Eden and Gehenna. Full tour, full scale, saw everything, one end of the universe to the other, complete clarity, only to get slapped on the face when he's born to forget it all. There's lots to talk about that, but we're not going to get into that. The idea here is the intellect. He wants to look at the secretary as the intellect in terms of understanding the metaphor of this story. And the driver is the body. So he might still have a driver. He doesn't have a secretary. It doesn't fit in. But it's, you just to talk about it because there's something here that could be something that we could embellish in here. So he says he remained in the wagon, which means the soul remains helpless in the body. I guess a person loses his intellect, but he comes back. The intellect comes back as the child grows up. So to use this metaphor as a child being born, it's a little bit hard to fit. We're going to use the Messiah, model so far, or your personal model so far, or humanity. Okay, we're not going to get into the wealthy landowners. So going on here. So we said a little bit, I don't understand this note here. I thought about it. I thought about what some people taught me. I only got two explanations to this. So he threw himself down from the wagon, meaning he divorced himself from bodily concerns. Okay, I can get that. Trying to wean off the influence of the physicality, trying to get spiritual. But he's eating grass. Now, this is animal food. Rabbi Nachman taught that it is sometimes good to be like an animal, which is like a bizarro kind of statement to say. I did look it up in Sichot Aran. And the idea was he didn't say much. A lot of times it says that, we say it in Shabbos, Adam ubehema toshia Hashem. Hashem saves the man and the animal. He says something really interesting. It's worth getting. Let me just get this for a second here. Number 15 in Sichos Aran. Yeah. Number 15. I think it was 15, right? The Rebbe said that it takes both wisdom and great effort to be like an animal. Thank you. The wisdom one needs to be like a beast is alluded to in the verse. Every wise-hearted man whom God bestowed wisdom is a beast. It's not the real verse in Exodus 36:1. Really, the real verse meant, right? Every wise-hearted man whom Hashem had bestowed wisdom, behema, in them. And in other words, anybody who had wisdom in them to build the tabernacle in the desert. But Rabbi Nachman read this as behema, as a beast, right? So, but he doesn't really explain it. He says, also, it's written like what I told you, God saves man and beast. Our sages say this refers to people who are wise and clever and conduct themselves, here it is, humbly like an animal. One of the kavanot, special intentions on Rosh Hashanah when we blow the shofar, it's an animal sound. And the idea really is for us to get into the animal part of ourselves that doesn't think too complicated. It knows the master. Where the master goes that way, we're going to go that way. Master goes that way, we're going to go that way. Whoever the shepherd is, just follow Hashem, not with too much sophistication. So like an animal. That's probably the best words that he says it here. Humble like an animal. Okay? And this is also Asaf's words. I was a fool. I did not know. I was like an animal before you. In other words, quite simple. Okay? So in any case, to eat grass would be like an animal, I guess, would be a way of getting like, you have to somehow at a certain time in a person's life, he has to cut out sophistication if he wants to reach happiness. Because usually the biggest barrier to a person's happiness is getting too overly sophisticated, because then you're full of doubts and you don't know what to do and you're always confused, and then you're unhappy. Happy is the man through. Okay, so in any case, skip down to the next note where it says the robbers representing the force of evil attack a person's feet, as we also see in the case of the moon. Feet represent the aspect of faith, emunah. Thus, the forces of evil strive to take away a person's faith. That could be what the angel of Esav, when he tried to hit the thigh of Yaakov Avinu, when he realized he couldn't get him, was to get at the faith. The idea here is to just remove doubt. Don't forget, the numerical value of Amalek, the arch enemy of the Jewish people, enemy of God, is Amalek, and the numerical value is safek doubt. If you are sure of yourself and you are sincere, you can accomplish anything. So here we get to the interesting thing. Here it says here that, okay, he got to a place where he couldn't even stand anymore, because the robbers made his feet feel even weaker. But as a result, he gained marvelous means of transportation, which could be the superpower, as we see that the diamond represents his ability to transport himself into different places. Could be, okay? I'm not sure. The robbers representing the forces of evil attack a person's feet, as we also see in the case of the moon. Feet represent the aspect of faith. Thus, the forces of evil strive to take. We've read that already. So he's crawl like he was a spiritual infant type of grass. Here's where we get interesting. And then, Rabbi, and we talked about this last time, there are grasses with great spiritual powers. And there was a passage in the Zohar where Rabbi Shimon did affirm that's where the statement comes from. And here's where it gets kind of tickling, because some people emailed me about the effect of certain grasses now that have become legal. People are using it for medicinal purposes. I even give kosher certification to many of those facilities for medicinal purposes. But of course, as we know, cannabis is a still a controversial issue. It has quite a stigma on it, even though that we can see really it's very pervasive in terms of people, their behavior. It seems to become more widespread. As when I was growing up, if I saw somebody doing it, that's illegal. Okay. And it kept me refraining from it until I was a teen. And then, of course, I was in my experimental stages. But I'm not sure that this is the reference, because don't forget, Rabbi Nachman did not give any reference to it. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein wrote a tshuva in the 70s, I believe, that he condoned it. He said, not condoned it, that's not, condemned it. Condoned it. He said it was forbidden. And he said forbidden for the reasons that, basically for many reasons, health-wise, you're going to make your parents upset. You can't really think, you're going to lose your mind, and you're not allowed to lose your mind. All kinds of reasons that you could definitely see clearly. People will say that Rabbi Moshe Feinstein Zatzal was not aware of the fact that it had medicinal properties. It could be. I don't say for sure, because I'd have to ask him personally, and I haven't had the opportunity. So he could say, yeah, I knew it had medicinal properties, but he still felt that it should be forbidden. Or maybe he didn't know the fact that it had medicinal properties. Most people are banking on the fact that he didn't know that it had medicinal properties, which is why many of the kosher certification agencies will give a kosher certification to cannabis only. Okay, it's because they see the tremendous benefit it has for a lot of people. There are other types of grasses that maybe there's no source in the Torah. First of all, you have to know where it says to take a intoxicating substance. As a matter of fact, the opposite. But died. They offered a strange fire. The clear commentaries say that they drank wine. They became intoxicated. They entered intoxicated into the holy. That they shouldn't have done. Maybe if they asked Moshe, he would have said, okay, maybe. Okay. But nowhere in ever, down the mountain, with the tablets, and Yeshua greets him and he goes, okay. Didn't happen. Okay. You got to try this stuff. Okay. So no. Okay. And a lot of rabbis will tell you it's klipa, it's husks. But of course, and I believe most people can, maybe prescribe it for themselves. I know a lot of people do, because they feel they need it medicinally for whatever their ailments is, whether it's lack of sleep, rheumatoid arthritis, all kinds A to Z, all kinds of ailments that people, many are using it for PTSD. I'm sure Dr. Rosenstock can fill us in on that. Okay. In any case, there's other types of grasses also that people are now, it's becoming very predominant. What do you call it? Public, publicized. One is the ayahuasca or DMT, which is called the God drug. People are going to South America and entering into these circles where they take this thing, throw up a little bit, and then have a kind of epiphany. And hey, I'm not saying not. I'm just saying I'm just putting it on the table, okay? But I tell you, if you'll ask one Orthodox rabbi, they'll say for sure not, okay? And I'm not sure that Rabbi Nachman is getting to this, but it certainly is a hint. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai does say that certain grasses have spiritual powers. And I did ask one rabbi, very knowledgeable person, and I heard from another rabbi who kind of concurred to it, saying, and bear with me this, he says, his language was, the Shekhinah is so sick. We are now in such a state, our last generation, the ankles, the footsteps of the Messiah, and the divine presence, the collective of Am Yisrael is so sick that we need this stuff in order to pick us up. And I asked this one rabbi, I said, what about in the 60s and 70s when LSD came out? Everybody was taking psilocybin and all kinds of stuff, peyote, all of these. I don't know if peyote's a grass. I don't know if mushrooms are grass, right? I don't think it has roots, okay? So in any case, they said that the Shekhinah, the divine presence in our state, is very, very, very sick. And this is the only thing that can lift us. So I asked him about the 60s. He says, because we weren't ready for it. The generation wasn't ready to have the great awakening. And for some reason, this could be, I'm saying could be. I know I'm going to get in trouble for this and YouTube's going to kick me off. Okay. This could be a gateway in order to, for some people, not for everybody, for some people to get to the place where they could stand and maybe even walk again. In other words, walking means progressing, meaning moving on, meaning you're involved in growing. That's where the feet take us. The feet are involved in bringing us to the future, bringing us to our destiny. And apparently, according to the formula here, Emunah is the big thing that brings us to our destiny. Okay? So the question, that's one idea, just putting it out there because I got another idea. Okay, so that's one idea what Asev is, it's grasses. It could be that there is now, because we're on the footsteps of existence, that somehow for some people, these substances can help a person achieve a breakthrough in order to get to the next level. Fair, suffice that for now. Okay, it is medically prescribed by some people. I hear stories about people who are suicidal. They too take a couple of mushroom trips and that's gone. Okay, gone. So it's not enough study, not enough research. They're still doing research about it. Lots to talk about there, maybe for another time. The other idea of what Asev means is grasses. I happen to see it in the Tikkunei Zohar. The Tikkunei Zohar takes the Hebrew word Asev, if you spell it in Hebrew, ayin, sin, and bet, and he says, well, if you take the word ayin, sin, and bet, Asev, so you take the shin out, it's really ab, sin, which is basically almost looks like a plant. But really what it is he says this Asev is ab. Ab, 72, is a very, very special number. 72 actually is the gematria of chesed, kindness, but it's also a very significant name of God. But the reference that it gives here specifically to of the 72 names of God. Just one second here. Okay. So we have in the parsha of Vayishlach, when Bnei Israel were at the splitting of the sea, just before the splitting of the sea, there are 3 verses there. I'm just giving you a real quick overview of this. There's these 3 verses, which each verse has 72 letters in it. And apparently, Vayisav Yovo Vayet, those are the 3 verses. There's a way, this is how they do it Kabbalistically, is they combine these 3 verses in a special way, and they form, because there's 72 letters in these 3 verses back to back, and they combine one letter from each one of these verses into what we call the 72 name of God. If you add up those, okay, it's Rayo, Resh Yud Vav, 216 letters total. That's another 16 letter name of God. And if you'll ever remember, a long time ago, there was this movie called Pi, where this guy basically got the formula to break the stock market, to figure out the algorithms. But it was the same holy name that can bring back the temple. And it was a 216 letter sequence or number sequence. In any case, everybody was after the poor guy. His name was Cohen. Yeah. All right. Just a little bit more. So the type of grass here that it's referring to is a name of God. Why the sin? Because the samech, that was because that the samech represents the certain place in the spherotic realm, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, which like is the middle section. And basically the 72 name of God is only addressing for another 72 name of God. Basically what it represents is it's a connection to God on this tremendously Kabbalistic level. Maybe the meditation, we'll get into it. The meditation of the 72 name of God is the thing that makes the cripple able to walk again. We're going to go with that. Okay? In any case, just to go on. Diamond. It's not literally a diamond. Evan Tova, it says, or a dumit in Yiddish. Maybe Rabbi Kaplan knows that a dumit in Yiddish was a diamond. Okay? Maybe it is. Maybe if you know Yiddish, you could tell me. Okay? All it said is in the Hebrew, Evan Tova. So in Yiddish, in the Talmud we have, now why did he bring this? And I looked this up. If you have not removed the clay, you would not have found the jewel under it. Okay, very good. Okay, talking about removing clay and finding a jewel under it, we can understand we're all diamonds in the rough. But still, that's why he uprooted the whole tree from the beginning. Okay, but in any case, he doesn't talk much about this jewel, and I tried to look it up and look in places for it, and there was no reference to it. Suffice it for that, we're going to leave it to a mystery. In any case, going to the next note, each side, it appeared to have 4 sides, but actually only 2 are mentioned as being used. The first side brought him to the place where he could get the information he needed, and the second brought him the healing. So the 2 sides may be Torah and prayer. Okay, Rabbi Nachmans' 2 foundation stones, but I have a feeling that okay? So actually, he grasped that stone. He was transported to the place where the sun and the moon are meeting, and they're having this conversation. Look at the note there on 87. Day and night come together, as we have read. This place is the source of his information, and this is Torah. The place where day and night come together is the study of Torah, because people always want to connect to the day and the night, even dawn and dusk, with Torah and Tefillah. It also fits in with the Psalm, right? Uvsaraso yege yomam v'layla, and he desires God's Torah. He meditates on God's Torah day and night. The Psalm, which is the key to the story, and this is the concept of joining day and night through Torah. Sun and moon, we got to get this, and then we'll leave it for today. Sun and moon. The sun is wisdom, and the moon is malchut. The moon represents the power that God gives us to understand the Torah. It also represents faith, through which the wisdom can be brought to fruition. So the sun, he wants to say, is wisdom, and the moon is malchut. Malchut is the lower place. But I'm going to share with you something that I heard, and it opened my eye up to a higher an understanding. That was fantastic. I heard this little talk from Rabbi Moshe Weinberger. He gave a speech where they were talking actually about two great leaders coming together, 2 great leaders who had passed away already. One was Rabbi Yosef Soloveitchik, and the other was the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And Rabbi Yosef Soloveitchik, he was the high intellect. He founded Yeshiva University. And of course, the Lubavitcher Rebbe was into Hasidus, which is, connecting with the heart. And he brought this unbelievable event. He talked about the unbelievable event that you have to really go to. Where did the sun and the moon, start off, right? They're always talking to each other, right? Usually, sometimes you see the moon over there and the sun over there, right? And they go, yeah! Okay. So, but there was a place where the sun and the moon did meet originally in creation. Hashem said, let there be 2 great luminaries. That was one sentence. And then after that was the great one and the small one. And all the commentaries say, well, they started off as equal. But then, of course, luminaries had a question, a kitrug, we call it. Okay. Kitrug means like a kind of a prosecution in a certain way. I guess it was attitude in there. And he asked, how can you have two kings sharing one crown? So obviously that's a little bit too sophisticated. So Hashem says, okay, you go small. You go small, you go poquito, and sun is muy grande. Muy grande es un poquito. Okay, so the moon's turned poquito since then. Thank you very much. Okay, so but the other idea, and the idea here is, so in our world, a lot of times we'll see that the intellect is very dominant over the feelings of the heart. And the idea of the sun and the moon, and get this, is the sun represents the intellect, like he says here, wisdom. And the moon, which is Malchut, well, it represents the emotional, the heart, the lave. Once there was the Divrei Chaim, I think it was, this big Hasidic Rabbi. He was getting, treated by a doctor. And, the doctor says, well, I've got 5 PhDs. I went to this school and that school. What do you do for a living? And he asked the rabbi, what do you do? And he says, I'm working on building a bridge. I built bridges. Oh, you're a bridge builder, construction. Pretty good, right? Actually, the Divrei Chaim, this Hasidic Rebbe, said, I don't know if he told him, but maybe he told the students afterwards. What he meant was building a bridge from the mind to the heart. There's a big disconnect, and there's a lot going on in the moon. The moon waxes and wanes. The moon is shrunk. It's almost debilitating. It can't move. It can't do what it needs to do. And definitely the place where the sun and the moon meet would be a dynamic place where the intellect and the heart can get together. And that is what I think, in terms of the personal metaphor, to understand this metaphor personally, as if we have places in our lives where we feel we are disabled and can't move forward. We need this grass and then Torah and tefillah to go ahead and bring the mind to the heart. In other words, to get the feelings that the mind should dictate really what the heart should feel. But the mind is also a little, it's crackly. It dries up the tree, man. Right? And the moon, and since it dries up the tree, man, the moon becomes disabled. So basically everybody's out of whack. The head's out of whack. The heart's out of whack. Everybody's out of whack here. That's where we're going to leave it for now in terms of our metaphor of understanding the cripple. And of course, the superpower is going to be super emunah and faith. And that is where we're going to work on navigating us in the coming weeks, in navigating and strengthening our faith. Don't forget, even mistakes that you made, comes from God. Even from when other people will insult you or do something to you, comes from Hashem. And even if you think it's nature, comes from Hashem. Everything comes from Hashem. All to bring us closer to Him. Okay? That is the thoughts that we have to hold fast, and these give us our feet to walk. Okay, we will stop now. Okay, and where am I here? Okay.